Good morning, good morning, my Periscope family. How are you? How are you? How are you? Hello, hello. Try to set my phone here. Good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is Elkie of Savvy Moms Unite, where I teach moms how to live a realistic, practical lifestyle that's tailor-made. I have a 9-year-old daughter who I've been parenting for the most part on my own for a good chunk of her life. And in my process, I've learned some things along the way that I thought would be helpful to pass down to other moms. But this question that I posed in my Periscope, which I am really excited to talk about, is excited, but also, of course, it comes with some challenges talking about this. Just to give you some background on me, I am an educator. I'm a director of diversity programs at a school, and I've been doing that for the last 4 years. And my work has really informed me about what's really going on in terms of the schools and just where kids are coming from. I work with high schoolers. And so where they're coming from, mentality-wise, what are they thinking about certain issues? I have those kind of conversations with my students all the time. And the episode of Blackish this week where the characters started to speak on different issues affecting the black community, particularly with the recent cases with people in terms of police brutality and that sort of thing. I thought the episode was great in that it really brought up some things that I know many parents are struggling with. And it's when do you have the conversation? When do you start to speak to your children about race and things that are in society that become a focus? And how do you have those conversations? And we all want to shelter our kids, of course. We don't want them to be so down on the world and think there's no hope and think there's no way of coming out of their situation. We certainly don't want that. But we have to be realistic. And part of what I do with my moms is share that realistic ways of doing things, especially when it comes to parenting. And I will say, dealing with my 9th through 12th graders, there are students who just don't understand, and they don't get certain things that are going on in the world. They can't understand why some people hate certain groups and don't like certain groups for whatever reason. They really struggle with that. And they don't understand why there's not equity in the world, and why things aren't fair, and why access is an issue. They don't understand it. And, I'm also dealing with some adults who are struggling themselves to understand it because the conversations were never had. So I have people that I work with who told me, I grew up in an environment where it was only me for so long. I was the only person. I never saw another person of color until I was 25. Okay. So that's really significant. That's a significant part of your life where you didn't interact with people who didn't look like you. So how did that inform your education? How did that inform your experiences? How did that inform the way you interact with people when you go outside of that space, right? So here I am, I have a 9-year-old I'm raising, and that issue has already come up before she was even in first grade. We've had to have the conversation, and she was 5 years old. And I'm having to tell her when a girl on her bus says to her, I don't want to sit next to you because you're black. I don't like black people. And she's being told this at 5 years old and having to really understand that. And so I'm having to have the conversation already because, unfortunately, it's not something we can escape. And we will have to tell our kids certain things like, yeah, your behavior as a black child matters, and you can't do certain things in certain spaces and get the same treatment as other people. That's real and honest. And you will have to understand that your behavior needs to be monitored and checked. And when you're walking through certain places, you got to be careful. It's hard to have those conversations, but they're real, because I know from my own experience, and I know from that of my brothers and sisters, that we were told that as kids from our parents. You can't walk up in, a store and not expect people to follow you. Like, it may happen. And it has happened to me. I've been followed several times. You can't, expect that just because you're educated, you will be treated the same as your classmates. And I've had instances of that myself, where I knew I was treated different because of the way I am and who I am. Even though I was just as smart as my classmates, I knew I was treated different, right? So I know that will be the experience to some degree as my child. I'm already seeing it. And so I'm very, very mindful, very careful, and I advocate for her when I can. I'm definitely, her strongest advocate, but I'm also doing some training at home. You've got to do the work at home. And this goes for any parent. I don't care if you're black, you're white, you're Hispanic, Latino, Indian, Native American. I really don't care where you come from. That conversation has to happen, because you know what's happening? We have kids who are coming into environments where they're expected to learn and understand and be exposed to different cultures, and they don't know how to. They don't even know how to have conversations when it comes to race, when it comes to diversity, when it comes to cultural expectations, religious, sexuality. They really don't have any understanding, because no conversation is taking place at home. The first conversation they're having is when they're 15 years old, some even older. Like I said, I have adults in my community who told me they were not having conversations regarding race until they were way into their adulthood. It's when they had the realization. So I think we're doing a disservice, and this is my opinion, we're doing a disservice to our children for not starting the conversations early. So they understand, okay, how do I interact? How do I maintain connections? How do I have difficult conversations? How do I deal with conflict in a really healthy way? We've got to start those conversations when they're young. And like I said, I'm already having to do it. I was already having to have those conversations when my daughter was 5 years old. And that was unfortunate. I didn't want to have to. I knew that at some point she'd deal with some issues. But I didn't want to have to tell her that, this child, must have been given some information that is unfortunate. And that's why she didn't want to sit next to you on the bus, because you're black. Or being told that, at one point she was told by a student just recently, this beginning of this year, was told by a student that she imagine she's in 3rd grade right now, and the student told her, "You are my slave. I own you, and I can own every one of your people." This is a 3rd grader telling another 3rd grader this, all right? That she's a slave. A white child telling my black child this. And I'm having to explain that to her and get her to understand why that's even something that's so wrong on so many levels. So that's why you got to have the conversation. You got to be honest with your kids. You got to be real. You got to tell them what's going on. You got to let them know that their experience may be different from others, but they need to also be strong in who they are. And that's a layer of protection. They got to be strong in who they are and be proud of who they are, despite what's out there and what society perceives them to be. But they need to be proud of who they are and where they come from. And that's what I do with my daughter. I really give her a sense of, like, whatever is said out there about you, whatever is perceived about you, you know that you come from great stock and have pride in that. So I know I went all over the place, but that clip this morning that I watched from Blackish just sort of got me thinking about, when do you have the conversation about race, and conversations I've had with my daughter, thinking about that, and just in general in my work, the work that I do, it all was connected. And so just start when you can. Start it sooner than later. You don't want your child having rude awakenings because you didn't prepare them for the conversation. So this is Elkie of Savvy Moms Unite, where I teach moms how to live a realistic, practical, simple life that works for them. My Twitter handle, my Instagram and Periscope is SavvyMomElkie. You can follow my page or join my group, Savvy Moms Unite, on Facebook, where I give tips, and I'll also post this video as well. Thanks again. I look forward to having more conversations.